And we're live. Welcome back to the LOOPcast. We have an excellent show prepared for you today. Today, we are going to be covering Trump's executive order signed last night, winding down the Department of Education, what exactly is in it, and addressing some common objections. I feel like we do it every episode, but we will do it again. Mostly peaceful protests are back, but this time targeting Teslas around the country. Time to talk about that as well. Evangelicals are hitting the panic button and are dropping strategies to counter Catholic conversions. Very interesting.
Ooh, love that.
And then finally, I have a new suggestion a priest has a new suggestion for Lenten penance, but we'll get to all that in a little bit. It's Erica, Tom, and Josh. And Erica, I'm going to be affectionately and truthfully calling her our education secretary here on the LOOPcast.
Whoa!
Erica,
Me and
before
Linda.
you get into the order itself, actually, it might be helpful for our audience, maybe longtime listeners don't even know, your background a little bit in education might be helpful. So go ahead. We'll start there and then into the order.
Sure. So I am the Secretary of Alternative Education. It goes way back. I was in public school. I had 5 years homeschool stint. Went to Catholic school for a year when I got kicked out of homeschooling. But in terms of my professional life, coming out of graduate school, I was part of a group called Regina Caeli Academies. I was the director of education for them as a network as they expanded their schools. And this was a hybrid model school in the classical tradition. So I'm
familiar.
And Tom Pegasic is a proud graduate of the Regina Caelis. And in Detroit, I got to work with his mother. Shout out, Janet.
What a wild ride life is.
Yeah, it was a wild ride, full circle here on LOOPcast. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in the K through 12 classical education movement and kind of cut my teeth on Mother of Divine Grace, Laura Berquist, all that. So I'm a big fan. We've always homeschooled our children. We've used all kinds of supports for that between the hybrid 2-day-a-week academy and the online classes, in-person co-ops. We've done it all. So if anyone ever wants to shoot the breeze about homeschooling, here I am.
So how did you feel about this, Erica?
Well,
Improving
are we
education?
just going to are we going to kind of gloss over the fact that she got kicked out of her homeschool?
Yeah. My mom will take massive exception to this, and I know she's listening as they drive down to visit for the weekend. So, hey,
shout out
Mom,
Miss Kunis.
Legend. Yes, I know I wasn't like technically kicked out. Let's just say I went through a difficult phase, as many young girls do in about 7th or 8th grade. And I announced my exit, and they were like, "Great, Catholic school for a year it is." I hated it, but I came through. I think I grew through the difficult phase. Yeah, personal reflection there.
Well, you learned from it, and you got better resources for your own children.
Regrouped.
That's right. Regrouped and multiplied. Yep.
So what are we looking at last night? This just
so this was last night Trump signed. This is one of his most anticipated executive orders. And in fact, one of his campaign promises was to be the president who finally dismantles the Department of Education, started that process when he appointed Linda McMahon, and really put the pedal to the metal here last night with this executive order called Improving Education Outcomes by Empowering Parents, States, and Communities. And the order really emphasizes, during the signing ceremony, he gave a speech introducing the order, and he really emphasized 3 points that I want to go through briefly. And then I want to answer, propose 3 concerns that critics have brought forth. So the first point Trump really brought home was this is about restoring local control to education, that education is best meted out to children through those closest to them, beginning with their parents, then their local neighborhood, schools, the larger city and state, and only later on, maybe some kind of federal role. He underscored the importance of returning authority to states and local communities. Second point he made was we have got to chop this bureaucracy up. The Department of Education has grown into this massive, since 1979, when Carter instated it, it's grown into this massive woke-topus, like Tyler O'Neill would say. I just looked up these numbers. In 2024, the U.S. Department of Education's budget was about $268 billion. This included funding for federal student loans, Pell Grants, and grants for vocational training. With this budget, the department employs just 4,100 individuals. That's 4,100 people on a budget of $268 billion. This week, we also got the stat DOGE uncovered that 47%, so almost half of that budget, went to compliance. So regulation compliance and overseeing the compliance of your local schools.
Wait, the government has a budget for compliance?
Certainly.
To comply with themselves?
Is that only on the K-12 stuff, though? Because, I mean, obviously, the Department of Education, there are going to be some people working on compliance to make sure federal student loan stuff is done, and
yeah, that makes sense.
Correct.
Other stuff, too. I mean, I can't speak to...
Yeah, so half the budget compliance overall. So this was the complete. So I would imagine it's K through 12 and secondary ed. This was the Visual Capitalist reported that the Department of Education has increased spending in the last 24 years, get this, by 649%, while the headcount of its employees has fallen 14%. So this is just sort of a snapshot of the massive bureaucratic structure that the president was taking aim at in his remarks. The third point he made with this was a campaign promise. He ran on this, and promises made, promises kept, sort of the tagline of the Trump administration so far. And he's aiming to empower parents more with this. The critics went wild, as you can imagine. Oh my gosh, he's shutting down education. MAGA people hate education. They hate minorities. Top concern, Trump has just cut special needs funding. So a portion of the role that the Department of Education has taken on in the last few years has gone to grants and programs for special education. Trump made it very clear in his remarks in the executive order itself, and then later on remarks from both Carolyn Leavitt and Linda McMahon, the education secretary, that Title I and IDEA funds, which are what people are concerned about, will be preserved in full through this process.
But however, because it's popular to attack.
Right. Yeah, because it's a good talking point to be like, Trump hates children who have special needs. So this is where the talking point comes in. But the executive order mandates that essential services such as this kind of funding continues uninterrupted as a transition is made. These funds, however, will be overseen in the future by another federal organization, such as the Department of Treasury, possibly the Department of Justice as a civil rights issue, and maybe even HHS, which oversees child support services. So again, these aren't going away. They are just being pushed over to agencies that are better suited to distribute them, agencies that are not in the thrall of the teachers' unions, which I'll get to in a second. The second concern that has been cited is that now we're going to have a massive impact on educational equity, because who else besides the Department of Education could make sure that poor Indian children on reservations get educated with the same opportunities that white kids in suburbia do? Well, turns out that one of the corruptions that Linda McMahon has pointed to with the Department of Education, and I looked this up with Heritage as well, the Department of Education has actually been slowly dismantling its grant programs to specific communities over the last 35 years or so. So according to Heritage Research, appropriations for Native American education have declined 27% between 1980 and then 2019, which are the last numbers that we have after adjusting for inflation. Also, impact aid for schools serving military families has dropped 41% during that time period, again, adjusting for inflation. And appropriations for civil rights enforcement has fallen 16%. Why is this? Because the Department of Education since 1980 has not been primarily concerned with students in these specific minority groups. Rather, it is designed to maintain the existence and to the proliferation of teachers' unions. They prefer formula-funded programs that go to districts and are not earmarked for certain populations, because then those funds, instead of going to, say, exactly, they can go for anything. So again, educational equity has not been a priority. In fact, it's been a diminishing priority of the Department of Education since its inception in 1979. If you want to know the purpose of an organization, look where its money goes, right? Josh, what's the line? Give us the line, Josh.
The purpose of a system is what it does.
Oh, yes. But we're
Yeah.
not done.
I mean,
Okay,
that's
go for
absolutely-
it. We can pause.
No, that's absolutely the
more.
case. I mean, the thing is, like, Republicans and conservatives have long been frustrated with the Department of Education because it doesn't actually put, student test scores, graduation rates. That's not what the Department of Education is trying to improve. They don't give a crap about that at all. For them, it's make sure that they fund money to districts so that the districts' budgets can bloat and they can hire more and more bureaucrats. And so you look at it, what the Department of Education has done through their government aid is to increase the wildly increase the ratio of bureaucrats to teachers, admins to teachers. If we want to have a more normal system where we have more teachers in the classrooms, then the first thing we should do is to try to reduce and reform or eliminate the Department of Education. So this is a good thing. It's a welcome thing.
I have a couple points on that. So the other thing, and maybe you're going to address this, Erica, from a student perspective, as someone that did take federal student aid, none of that is being touched. And if I look at the percentage of budget to what actually gets sent out to students, I see the budget for that is $103 billion for funding for things like Pell Grants, work study programs, and federal student loans, which is a significant portion of that. If the extra budget being allocated just for compliance on those loans is so large, we clearly have a problem in the application process or the administration process or whatever that I think actually everyone should be on board with, trying to actually make that more efficient so that we're not just spending so much of this budget on whatever. And it gets back to waste, fraud, and abuse used to be
to come over.
Exactly. Work, fraud, waste, and abuse is a bipartisan issue. I think the Department of Education actually has been made fun of quite a few times by Democrats as well. This isn't a new thing. And if you look, actually did go back and find their mission, Josh. So if you're saying what they're saying that they're trying to do isn't matching up with reality here, quote, to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. It sounds like it's accomplishing none of that right now.
Yeah,
if we go back and look at the historical numbers. So based on what it's saying it's its stated mission, it's completely failing. So it's shuttering it. The promise of actually closing it down, first off, isn't happening. I know that was a campaign promise. It's completely refocusing, making more efficient, and hopefully getting it towards the stated goals that it has. So it feels like something that everyone should kind of be on board with. I don't know who would be.
Well, right. To the point of it's not completely shuttering down. Obviously, that's true. Like Erica said, you take some things like aid for special needs kids, you put it over in Justice or HHS. Mm-hmm. The student loan stuff is not being touched at all. So that continues. But all of the main Department of Education stuff, like threatening to cut off money for school lunches unless you allow boys to be in girls' bathrooms, that's the crap that's stopping. Not only are we not having those kind of regulations, but like the agency that would be issuing those kind of things, like you have no, like, actually, Jeremy Wayne Tate, who's a good education reformer, he goes, I just got back in a time machine and told the founding fathers we closed down the Department of Education, and I could hardly get a word in edgewise. Like, why did you create one to begin with? They kept saying.
Why did we even have one?
Like, why on earth would this behemoth on the Potomac be telling school districts in Paducah, Iowa, what the heck they should be doing? Like, this is absolutely asinine. Like, I'm sorry, like. And this gets back to like one of my favorite moments in politics when Senator Phil Gramm from Texas, he's long since retired, he ran for president. He was not the most charismatic candidate ever, but he was in this discussion with this bureaucrat who was convinced that she actually loved your children more than you do, or just as much as you do. And he said, "Oh, really? What are my kids' names?"
The first question.
I had no answer.
That's up there with Reagan making the age joke, flipping around the age joke during that presidential debate. I mean, some of these lines are so good. Erica, I want to give you the opportunity to finish though what you were saying. There was one more thing I think you wanted to address.
Yeah, there was one more. The other concern that's been raised in critical circles, shall we say, is that this is going to have an adverse effect on our public school teachers. And Trump actually went out of his way during his remarks to say, I love teachers. We love our teachers. This is going to be great for the teachers. And yeah, so, he's doing a little theater there. But again, I think it's really important to look at what has the Department of Education actually done. They host a portion of the grant money goes to what's called professional development for teachers, a couple of billion and by the way, those professional development seminars, which cost tens of thousands of dollars per district, are staffed primarily by union leaders and union bosses. So there's that little nice, eddy of money going on.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you look at the most recent budget, $1 billion went to grants for what the Department of Education called 21st Century Community Learning Centers. Now, the purpose of these is to expand the set of services provided by schools. So now, instead of schools hiring an administration, which is completely blown out of proportion, and teachers, and giving that money to teachers, the money has actually been going to expanding what services schools provide to include doctors, nurses, dentists, social workers, and psychologists. The money is not going to increase teacher salaries. In fact, you can go and pull all kinds of stats on how teacher salaries have not kept up with inflation. Teachers don't make enough. The money has been going to expanding this. Why? Why would we love this broader, bolder vision of school staff? Well, because it allows the union to add a whole new subset of members to itself. Teachers' unions have been shrinking in membership for decades, basically, since the demographic winter started to set in the mid 2000s. And so this was a way that the Department of Education could funnel funding to schools to increase staff without hiring more teachers, and that this way increase the rolls on the unions. So again, the purpose of a system is what it does. You have to look at what it has actually been doing before you make claims like, oh, somehow this is going to hurt public school teachers. Yeah, we need to dismantle the whole 21st Century Community Learning Center concept.
But Erica, no one was educated before 1979. Come on. Don't you know that?
Oh, gosh, we were all so dumb. Maybe we weren't educated in Marxist ideology to the extent that we are now. This was another one that came up with a family member. I keep bringing up my family member conversations, but they're just so interesting.
Good debates.
So someone brought up, she was like, well, if it wasn't for the Department of Education, we would still have segregated schools because it was the Department of Education that forced compliance with Board v. Brown of it. And I'm like, Brown v. Board of Education. And I'm like, that was in 1954, you do realize. And the enforcement of that went on for 20 years before we even had the Department of. So don't let people tell you that we would still have segregated schools. Yeah, that makes no sense at all. Anyway.
Yeah, it's odd. It's odd for me to see. I guess it shouldn't be odd for me to see people just reflexively defending the status quo, especially if you're in education. Like, I could see why you would see it as a potential attack. But if you're actually a teacher, I feel like most teachers are. I'm even seeing some teachers in the chat being like, okay, all this professional development stuff is garbage. It doesn't actually help us. The teachers unions are way too powerful and not actually helping me teach potentially. I think I come from a family of teachers. I have a little bit of perspective on this. I think my dad actually kind of Ron Swanson and was a union rep at one point. But
did you just accuse your dad of Ron Swanson?
I'm not accusing. I think it was happening allegedly, in case there's any legal implications. But he joined. He became a member. I think he represented his school because he hated the union so much, and he tried to get as little done as possible for the unions.
But Thomas Jefferson would be proud.
Quiet quitting.
Fun personal anecdote. I don't know if he's listening today, but basically the purpose of the teachers union, it's important for everyone to understand this. They don't even claim to be in the business to improve student outcomes. That's actually not their function. They're not their job. They actually don't even say that anywhere. Maybe they'll kind of allude to it, but not anywhere in the written. Their job is to get the best possible situation for teachers. That's all they're there for. It's like if you hire an attorney, they're there to represent you. They're not necessarily there for the public good, which is honestly kind of good in some cases. They're there to represent you. So teachers unions are fighting tooth and nail, not only to promote themselves, but for the best outcomes for teachers. And then you have the government side of like funding school businesses. Or schools. So like state funding going towards a school. And so they're constantly negotiating on behalf of the government and on behalf of teachers. No one's advocating on behalf of the students, which is kind of the unfortunate reality on all of this. But it's good for people to understand this. And now it feels like from the top, from a federal level, we've reached enough of this kind of big glaring red flag alarm of our students are falling behind.
Right.
There's no question. Everyone talks about it. Everyone understands this, whether you're a teacher in a classroom and you've seen these standards slip, or you're being pushed crazy stuff from the federal government, or you're looking at bigger, broader numbers. Everyone kind of acknowledges there's a problem. So I feel like this is a good first step towards, okay, we need to just take a step back, address everything we're doing, whether it's administering federal aid for college students or how we're educating elementary school in Indiana. Doesn't matter. Whatever the system is propagated to be is not working, and we need a new direction. So I like that kind of agency from the top to set this as a bit of a mandate, hopefully trickle down. I mean, for example, I want to bring up this. This was a crazy study talking about the ideology of what gets taught in schools. So I came across this study: white non-college men, a more blue-collar demographic, and white college plus women, a more upscale one, have come to exist in two polar opposite political and cultural universes. So for people,
okay, well, this is an indictment on colleges, not on K-12. So
no, not K-12, but K-12 eventually gets pushed towards colleges, and then we eventually get here, right? Like this is kind of
I'm saying that most people can still survive the brainwashing of K-12, but most liberal universities, it's
right. But what is the end goal? Public stated end goal of education in the country?
Yeah,
they
think everyone should push them into a 4-year university. Yeah, of course.
That was a public initiative from the federal level, and that's not why we get in all this trouble with FAFSA. That's why no one can afford college. Part of it. But if you look at this poll, just so we can get this up, you see voters' opinions of, and it's easier to read on YouTube. But the polar opposite here is for white men, no degree, favorability of Donald Trump plus 41,
huge
negative 38 for white college women.
Yeah, like an 80-point swing.
And then all the polar opposites here are going to be J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Doge, Republican Party, complete opposites. And then you get Vladimir Zelensky, -5 white men, no degree, and then plus 53 white women college degree.
They like those combat boots. What can I say?
DEI complete flip, and then Democratic Party actually. This is how unpopular Democrats are right now. If -4 is all you get out of white college women.
Even the college-educated white women are -4 in the Democratic Party. Come on, guys.
Well, that's because they think they're not going far enough.
That's true. They're not.
That's a good point.
But the thing is, like, okay, so it's interesting. It's not like Donald Trump is having the Department of Education force every high school in the country to do super patriotic MAGA style American history. And it's not like J.D. Vance is getting in there and forcing them to teach classical education and make sure that kids take, a year or two of Latin. There's no attempt to have, like a MAGA style Department of Education. In fact, he's like, no, I'm shutting it down and let you guys do what you want to do in your own states. Now, the thing is, every single organization has, as its stated goal, this is my mission, this is what we want to do. But ultimately, every organization, and I say this truthfully, every organization has the element of self-preservation. Okay? I get that. It's the same thing for Catholic Vote. It's the same thing for our Catholic Church. And sometimes, when corruption sets in is when you lean on and forget about what your stated goal is, in this case, educating kids, making sure there's more money in the classrooms. And your real objective is self-preservation and taking care of, increasing the number of federal bureaucrats, increasing the number of admin jobs in all of these school districts. It's not really helping kids in the classroom. And so that's an element where we say, hold on a second. We get every organization has this, defense mechanism of self-preservation. We totally understand that. Right. But the fact is you're failing. You're not doing your job. And therefore we need to shut you down. And that's what it gets to. And, like we've seen this through a lot of organizations in the last, in the 21st century. I think we've, as Americans, have seen so many of our institutions fail us. Our federal government totally botched the war in Iraq. There's the intelligence failure of 9/11. There's the real estate bubble, that was probably Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So the federal government was screwing a lot of things up. The Afghanistan debacle, the border stuff. Of course, it's not that they screwed up. In some cases, it was intentional, obviously.
Affordability of college education, Josh.
And then we see,
$30,000 in debt.
And then we see in American life, obviously, our own Catholic Church had so many, disasters and stuff like that. And, again, Americans are starting to get sick and tired of failure, and they want responsive government. And that's why, like with the Doge thing, for example, a lot of this cutting spending and stuff like that, and tariffs, some Americans like, well, I kind of like the Doge is cleaning things up, and I'm not a fan of the tariffs. But Democrats hope that Trump's numbers would just fall, haven't
Right.
materialized, because people are like, at least they're doing something. I don't agree with everything, but at least they're getting some stuff done and holding institutions accountable, because that has been the story of the 21st century. Institutions on a massive scale have failed the American people.
Yeah.
Right. And there's been so much talk. I mean, I can remember George W. Bush having, like, I'm going to reform government. I mean, there were some old Obama tapes that surfaced this week of Obama and Joe Biden being like, we need to cut government waste. We
Waste,
need to
fraud, and
blah, blah,
abuse.
blah.
It was the same
Waste,
words.
fraud, and abuse. It was the exact same words that like Doge is throwing around now.
Smart.
And nothing happened. In fact, it grew worse and worse because they really intended it to go worse and worse. But the fact that things are actually getting done now is, like you said, Josh, and I think like part of the frustration that I get, because I read conservative columnists and op-ed journalists over like National Review and even at like Wall Street Journal, like, well, we really shouldn't slash like the arts program because we really should just reform it because we need good arts, or we shouldn't cut the Department of Education. We should reform it.
Kennedy
And you're
Center.
like, we've been talking about reform for these institutions for so long, and that is just code for status quo, because everyone's so afraid to like, oh my gosh, what if I like cut this and then they accuse me of being like hating kids with ADHD, which is what they're doing right now with Trump. Like in a sense, at a certain point, you have to say this is a lost cause. And I think the Department of Education is the flagship model for lost cause. And this is absolutely a necessary step.
Well, hey, if you'd like things to get better, maybe you should check out Home Title Lock. Shout out Home Title Lock, new sponsor. Did you know that American homeowners are over $32 trillion in equity, and criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing? Scammers can transfer your title out of your name using a one-page document that they file at the county. Then they take out loans against it or even sell it behind your back. Scariest part, you won't even find out about it until a collection or foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox, leaving you with financial and a legal nightmare. The best way to protect your equity is with Home Title Lock's exclusive $1 million triple lock protection. This service offers 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if fraud should occur, their US-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your life. So, when was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is clear. It's never. And that's exactly what scammers are counting on. The good news is we've partnered with Home Title Lock to offer you all 30% off their services. So you can go to HometitleLock.com/loopcast to save 30%. And you'll also get a free title history report to ensure that you're not already a victim. And make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. Click on the link in the description below. That's HometitleLock.com/loopcast, HometitleLock.com/loopcast. Thank you for sponsoring the program. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. Speaking of security issues, we got the next iteration of mostly peaceful protests have dropped. Maybe some of you have seen this online. My goodness, Tesla has become kind of the new, what do they say? Like it's in vogue kind of to do gross things to Teslas. And I guess I saw someone like wipe their butt and rub it on it. I mean,
if that was all that it were, it would be nasty, of course, but that's not it. That's not it. It's not stopping there, is it?
Yeah. So we got a swastika painted on it here.
Vandalism. That's right.
There's some vandalism. That's the first part. And then didn't we have someone just burn down an entire dealership? This one was the craziest. Now I could actually,
that scared me.
A lot can relate to this. So here's a Fox News report. I won't even play the audio on it. This is a guy.
Thankfully by myself.
Lee was on the way to a doctor's appointment in Linwood Wednesday morning when she says all of a sudden a driver behind her just laid on the horn as they came up to a red light. Things spiraled out of control when a white SUV followed her and cut her off, stopping in the middle of the road.
Gets out and walks straight up to my window.
With a mask
so I cracked
on.
my window and I said, what is the problem? And he goes, you need to sell your car. This is a Nazi car. You're driving it. You need to sell your car.
Lee says she's been driving a Tesla for the last 2 years. She says a man wearing a camouflage jacket and a ski mask attacked her for it.
It's really sad, like, that this is what's happening.
Could you imagine someone in a
Oh my
ski mask
gosh.
blocking
Lady.
you and coming up to you? I'm surprised she doesn't have a gun.
Do not crack. She's in Seattle. She doesn't have a gun. Like, do not crack the window. You close the window, lock all the doors, and drive up on the curb and get away from that guy. That's
Dude,
my
as
first.
soon as that guy gets out of the car, start
Gone.
driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I mean,
And
and this
if
was
you happen to run him over by accident, whatever.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
the,
this
this is
oh,
what I
yeah,
was talking
here's
about was the
fire.
biggest is that
Yeah.
there's this huge fire in Las Vegas. Someone set a
explosions.
Tesla on fire and it's just
Yeah,
gone to the whole thing.
apparently he threw 8 Molotov cocktails at this Tesla dealership, setting like 3 cars on fire, and then multiple more caught on fire when there was this massive explosion. And at this point, this is putting people's lives in danger. This is absolute
Obviously.
domestic terrorism.
And just hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage too. I mean,
Yeah.
like, good golly, like,
One of those cars is like $80,000. I mean, it's 60, maybe 60 for the car.
yeah, that's a lot
Cybertruck's
of
It'd
money.
be one thing, but to me, this would all be one thing if these are like independent actors. But of course, nothing happens in a vacuum. There are people legitimately encouraging. I saw Rick Wilson got banned from X for
Yeah,
telling people
he's
to kill
not.
Tesla.
And then you had Jimmy Kimmel making jokes about it, like it was all funny on ABC, and there are at least still some idiots that watch his show.
Oh yeah, I don't know who's watching at this point, but
Vandalizing Tesla vehicles, new Tesla vehicles. Please don't vandalize. Don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so,
And he looks right at the camera. I mean, he's
Give
like
a little
dog
wink.
whistling for it. He's just like,
no, he winked at the camera.
yeah, it's so gross. Did you check out
Mr.
John
Blackface.
Cusack? Yeah, there was this massive
I remember.
Tesla takedown. Yeah, right. I know. Tesla takedown rally or whatever, virtually, of course. And John Cusack appears, and he's like, they're talking about how they need to community organize to protest against Tesla. And he's like, Musk is literally killing people and stealing your metadata. And he's calling on listeners to show up at their Tesla dealers. And he never actually says throw the Molotov cocktail. But in the context of everything that is going on, you know that you're playing with fire when you put out statements like this, and you know there are people who are sick and angry, and you keep telling them Elon Musk is Hitler. He is literally killing thousands of people. What do you think people are going to do?
So I just want to make sure I understand this correctly.
Yep.
Throwing Molotov cocktails to set ablaze Teslas, not apparently a problem, but someone lifting up a podium and walking around in the Capitol J6, the end of democracy.
Straight to
Okay.
jail.
So actually, I want to speak to that because I was seeing debates on this online. And of course, there's some really unhinged people who are just saying, go burn the Teslas, go crazy, do a lot of the vandalization. And to me, casual observer, I mean, maybe not casual, I cover this kind of closely, but I lived through a period of time after Roe v. Wade when it was open season on Catholic churches, just open vandalism, attacks, interrupting masses. Right, exactly. I mean, it's still happening. We're over 300 attacks. Like there's a real kind of, and
Almost 500.
firebombing pregnancy centers, things like that. I mean, these people really, truly had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. It's not like they went and attacked someone or anything like that. So it seems to me that there's a real domestic violence streak with the progressive left that I don't see on the fringes of the right, maybe you'd want to say. And the argument right back was, well, what about January 6th? Isn't that kind of the same thing? If I could ask you to expound upon it a little bit, is
I'd
that
love to.
the same? And if you don't think so, how's it different?
Well, the person that got killed on January 6th was a protester, not a
Ashley
cop.
Babbitt.
And what happened with the left? Let's talk about the left. They
Sure.
tried to assassinate, one of these wackos tried to assassinate House Minority Whip Steve Scalise. He was playing softball practice, and a guy unhinged came with a gun and started opening fire. And if it weren't for the fact that Steve Scalise had just been elected to the leadership and then therefore had some security detail, it could have been a slaughter. Like 5 or 6 congressmen and senators could have all been killed, and then gee, can I think of anything else recently? Oh, I don't know. Like the 2 times that they tried to assassinate Donald Trump,
Brett Kavanaugh too.
Eventually it's going to
Brett
happen.
Kavanaugh.
And eventually we're going to have someone assassinated, because like it's unhinged. And like what, we had a guy try to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh to try to prevent Roe v. Wade from being overturned. They got him at his house. It's like, has there been anything like this on the other side? Has anyone tried to assassinate? And I certainly obviously don't want this. I'm just saying, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anyone try to assassinate Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi or AOC. I haven't heard any of that kind of crap. And obviously I would condemn it. But it's like, if there's a violence problem out here, it's the left, because they torch their own cities.
Yeah.
That's what communism is. Destroy, destroy, destroy.
Well, they're torching their own. They're torching their own primary tool in the fight against climate change. Here, I mean, this is you can talk about the ironies all over the place, right? And more disturbing than that. So we have people calling for the murder of Elon Musk all over Boston last weekend. There were these stickers that said like "Kill Elon Musk," and they're just pasted everywhere. The most disturbing, though, is I think there's actually call for violence against ordinary people who drive Teslas. So
like that girl, that's amazing. That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's so
I'm
crazy.
telling you, if that was my daughter, I'm like, dude, you drive away and you start driving towards that dude
fast as you can.
He jumps out of the way. Like you need to make sure you protect yourself.
Yeah, and how about a ban on masks outdoors? Can we just do that? Because every single piece of footage I've seen from the Tesla car security cameras, it's been like people wearing masks coming and pulling down their pants and doing unspeakable things to the car. But they're all wearing masks, so it's like, who is this person? So let's just like get rid of the masks outdoors. But more disturbing. So this week we had the New York Post broke a story on DogeQuest, which is a website that has an interactive map of all Tesla. It purports to have an interactive map of all Tesla owners in the USA. At least a dozen Tesla owners have confirmed that in fact their home addresses were on this website that encourages people to go and make protests, whatever that means. But we're talking like we have seen Molotov cocktails. We've seen
Playing with fire, literally.
Is playing with fire, and this website doxes all of these Tesla owners all over the country and calls for action.
All right.
So it's not just assassination.
Yeah, exactly. Shine, bro.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Cash.
it's an FBI problem. No, I mean this is domestic terrorism.
Yes.
Is there any other way to put this?
Right. And Joe, what did Joe Biden say last year? The biggest problem was white supremacy. Like
no, Josh, no.
It's 1910.
No,
like,
Josh, wrong. About? It was parents at school board meetings. Actually, were the real domestic terrorists.
Domestic terrorists.
Incorrect.
False.
Yeah, I would just say, I guess it makes sense now, like a lot of what Trump is saying. Like, I've actually been surprised to the extent that Trump has really propped up Elon Musk, given him so much praise, talked him up in the media. He did the like stunt with the Teslas in the White House. And really, every time he gets the chance, he comes around and keeps saying he does not have to do this. He doesn't have to do this. He could be making a lot of money. He could have stayed neutral. He could have done all these things. And I think in Elon himself, when he talks, acknowledges like, yes, like I knew all of this was coming. We knew the type of people that we were running against. We knew what we were going to come up against here. And I just,
a little anecdote on that.
Yeah, go for it.
So a precursor to Catholic Vote, my friend and I were campaigning and we were trying to rally against Tom Daschle in South Dakota. And we went around that state telling people about his pro-abortion record. And some of the people that we had that came forward that worked with us, they had their tires slashed. What? No, it's South Dakota. But I'm telling you, these lefties, these communists, they have all the rage and they lash out. They talk civility, but they're full of crap. They don't believe in it, and they want to shut you down and they want to shut you up, and they use intimidation and they use these tactics. You gotta, and it requires people to be brave and to stand up. Against it.
100%. I was doing some research into the funding behind the Tesla protests. So like the John Cusack
gosh, of course. It's probably funded by all these billionaires.
I mean, here we go. We have 5 ActBlue funded groups who are responsible for coordinating Tesla protests around the country with organizations like #TeslaTakedown. I was talking about John Cusack's appearance on that one. So some of these are the names to say it all: Troublemakers, Disruption Project, Rise and Resist, Indivisible Project, and the Democratic Socialists of America. Funders include Here he comes, George Soros, Reid Hoffman, Herbert Sandler. I mean, the names, it's all the same names that we saw for the George Floyd protests, for the post-Dobbs handmade stuff protests. I did look up one of them. This is the fun mission statement from the Disruption Project, and it reads like the Communist Manifesto. Here we go. The Disruption Project is dedicated to supporting uprisings, resistance, and mass direct action. Our belief is that when mass numbers of people stand up and take action against unjust systems of racial capitalism, the heteropatriarchy, that's you guys, and white supremacy and settler colonialism, we have the ability to force ruptures and dismantle systems. And it goes on and on. This is really violent rhetoric. And they prey on kids who are hurt. They prey on kids on college campuses with parent abandonment, with gender dysphoria, with autism, I mean, with all kinds of underlying issues. And they tap into that rage and they're like, hey, we can help you dismantle everything you hate. And here's a Molotov cocktail, guys. Funded by yours truly, George.
I have a quote. I have a quote to potentially end. This is actually a Pat Buchanan quote from
I
his
love
famous,
a good Pat
culture war speech. But the mob retreated because it had met the one thing that could stop it: force rooted in justice and backed by moral courage.
Yeah, that was a speech. That was a speech talking about the National Guard, these young 19, 20-year-old boys rolling into L.A. and stopping the riots. And they're about to ransack an old a house for elderly people. Like, can you imagine like a mob doing that? Like, do you have like no morals? Like, sick.
Well, Josh, I lived through 2020. I can imagine it.
It's a mob. But
it was nice to see it because what Buchanan had done in that speech is he had said, like, truly law enforcement are acting like, with the highest amount of love, because they said he likened it to Christ, but that they lay down their life, for a friend. Well, not even a friend, for someone they don't even know.
Stranger.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I feel like that a lot, like with a lot of this noise, whether it comes to the Department of Education and people trying to preserve their self-interest, or in legitimate domestic terrorism when it comes to Teslas. A lot of the online noise at the end of the day is just noise. Like, and what I want, and I feel like the Trump administration gets, Trump 2.0, is we put in people with true backbones that are here for the right reasons, have moral courage, and have the courage to act it out, even though consequences will be negative, whether that's from the media, whether that's from legitimate domestic terrorism here. But I think at the end of the day, like that's an American idea. We founded our country based on those ideas. So I look forward to seeing what more the Trump administration does, but it feels like a lot of their actions have truly been like getting terrorists out of the country. Like, yeah, there's going to be people screaming, but they need to get out of our country.
I have to say, there's some people in the chat who are expressing just anxiety and frustration about all this stuff that's going on with these protests and the judicial stuff, like the judges trying to overturn everything. And it just feels like all these efforts that you're talking about that Trump's trying to do are getting stymied. And I would just say, like, the protests, they always protest anytime a Republican's president, whether it's Bush or Reagan. But this lashing out is so incredible and intense. And I think it's because they know that Trump is making a difference. I think that's why. Number one. Number two, we are going to get a remedy on this judicial stuff, this nonsense where any judge in the middle of nowhere can just slap a nationwide injunction to try to stymie these efforts of reform. But I just had to hold steady. Like when we have a fight like this, that we're going to get these kind of crazy reactions and people are going to start losing their minds. Keep the faith, keep working, keep praying, keep pressing on.
Yep.
Amen.
I'd say it better than that. Okay. So we have now Church Corner, very interesting article. Shout out to our very own Rachel Quackenbush here. I'll share the headline is on Catholic Vote. We have evangelicals call for a strategy to counter rising Protestant conversions to Catholicism. Very interesting. This got a ton of buzz.
Perfect topic for Lent, too.
It went viral.
Yeah, it was all over Twitter. Just a quick summary. We've discussed very high profile Protestants converting to Catholicism before on the show, but now Protestants themselves are paying attention to this. March 1st article from the Gospel Coalition sounded the alarm over a growing number of Protestant intellectuals, pastors, and influencers converting to the Catholic faith. This was written by TGC's Andrew Voigt. The article is framed as a strategic response to stem the tide of conversions, and it warns of the effectiveness of Catholic apologetics, particularly online, and urges Protestants to develop a more robust counter narrative. Interesting.
So what's the strategy?
Well,
what's the
before we
secret
get to
strategy?
that, part of it was that it, like there were some evangelicals that were making this point, like, no, I'm forgetting the guy's name. He was profiled in the New York Times just recently. I want to say it's Aaron Wren, but
the guy that moved to Carmel?
Yeah, he made the point that a lot of them, this is when the blow up happened with Wheaton College, which is supposedly evangelical school, and it's gone very woke. And so a lot of moms and dads are like, I don't want to send my kid to Wheaton and end up getting woke and stuff like that. So I'll send him to Hillsdale. And Aaron Wren's like, just a lot of evangelical parents are kind of sounding the alarm about Hillsdale.
Watch out.
Which
The
is
conversions are real.
is a Protestant, conservative college where, I and many others deepened our faith in Catholicism. So it's not that large of a school, maybe 1,200, but they get like a dozen evangelicals every year at Hillsdale to convert to the Catholic faith. It's pretty impressive.
Least. Last year, I believe it was 27. So
what? Let's just start here. I mean, what concerns do you think Protestants have with the effectiveness? What do you think has been so effective about the Catholic response?
I would say, first of all, obviously, their aim here is to try to prevent Protestants, evangelicals from leaving the faith and becoming Catholic, leaving their faith and becoming Catholic. So they're trying to say we need to work harder at doing it. And my recommendation, obviously, I don't want them to succeed.
Josh, stop giving him advice, dude.
No, but what I would like, but part of I can tell them why that they're failing before is because you put forward a comic book version of what the Catholic Church teaches. And so then when these kids, in the evangelical world are, oh, you worship Mary, oh, blah, blah, blah. They spout these like total non-truths. And, it's like, like the Jack Chick tracks. And then they come to Hillsdale and they meet someone who's, went to a Chesterton Academy school or homeschooled, and they start, oh, well, you're Catholic. Well, you believe blah, 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 blah. And the kid just goes, slices them like Swiss cheese. Like, what are you talking about? No, that's not what we believe at all. And these Protestants evangelicals aren't ready for this. And they're caught flat footed. And, so to the extent that I might be like, you know what? Not only should you understand your own faith better, but stop with this comic book version of what Catholicism is.
Stop mischaracterizing.
Like that's kind of what.
Yeah, but isn't that a double loss? Josh, isn't that a double loss? Because if you go deeper, then you're going to find the Catholic Church.
Oh,
I'm not even meaning to be like a.
Okay, you told me not to give them answers, but you're not understanding my secret plan here. Come on, Tom.
Dang it. That wasn't exactly an alley-oop. I think I threw a bad alley-oop pass to you there, but
here's the thing. What is it? Fulton Sheen said that there's not even but like one person in the entire world that like understands Catholicism and rejects it. Everyone, what they reject is what they think the Catholic Church stands for. Like the devil himself knows what the Catholic Church is and rejects it, but there's so few people. Like they have this sort of comic book version of what the Catholic Church is, and they're like, oh, they easily refute that straw man, like, oh, way to go, buddy. And frankly, the Catholic Church in the United States the last 40-50 years hasn't been anything worth really bragging about, quite honest. So if you walk into a normal St. Bingo's in suburbia with horrible architecture, you're like, what is going on? Like my friend told me, he went to a Catholic church and across the street, he could hear the Baptist church and they were just doing so great. The music was so lively and he's a convert to the Catholic faith. And he's just thinking, oh gosh, I just know they love Jesus. They're mistaken on things, but like they're alive. And in here,
everyone needs to hit a gospel.
But my friend did not reject Jesus in the Eucharist. So
everyone needs to hit a gospel concert at one time in their life. It was probably the most fun I've ever had in a live music event. It was unbelievable. But Eric, I would like to hear. Yeah. I went when I was in college, and it was actually a birthday gift from my mom. Kirk Franklin. If anyone knows Kirk Franklin, he's got some great gospel tunes.
That's awesome.
We were like the only 5 white people in there, but it was awesome. It was the most fun I've ever had. I got a hug from like a 300-pound woman behind me, told me Jesus loved me. That was sick.
That's awesome.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Does not happen at my local parish ever.
No.
No,
No.
that's great. Yeah, no, I think too, to Josh's point, that I feel a little bit like we talked in the last few days about the Democrats being like, oh, we have a problem. We just need a bigger stage or something like that. Or how are we look all of the, and I'm not saying that the evangelical Protestants are Democrats. I'm just drawing an analogy in the misunderstanding of what's going on here. So the evangelical Protestants are saying, okay, the Catholics have like Bible in a year, Rosary in a year. They've got Matt Fratt, and like they're getting all the. We need the Protestant version of those things. The problem is,
It's like the
you
Lucky
don't
Cindy
have
podcast bros. Yeah.
exactly. We need our own Protestant podcast bros.
Yeah.
The problem is, one, Protestantism doesn't have a central message other than, Jesus is Lord. We're not Catholic. They don't have a
Let her
single
finish.
doctrinal source. So when it comes to things like IVF, they're all over the place. When it comes to things coming out of the sexual revolution, there is a wide range of acceptable in the evangelical sphere, right?
Well,
Whereas in the Catholic Church, there is one teaching, like it is clear. And yes, maybe like Father at St. Bingo's doesn't agree, like we have Father James Martin, but it's
yeah.
pretty clear.
Yeah.
You can do the research and realize they are deviating from the actual teaching of the Catholic Church. Whereas your local evangelical Protestant minister, he's just doing what Protestants do, which is
I
he's just
mean,
different.
I got to push back on this.
Okay, go for it.
I mean, you have the Catholic Church on paper in the Catechism with its teachings that are set, kind of in stone, versus
Right.
like the evangelicals in all the ways, and Protestantism as it has splintered 30,000 different ways. I just don't think that's necessarily a fair or helpful description of the situation. The reason I say that is because just because they don't have a pope or they don't have a catechism per se that kind of unites them doesn't mean that there aren't central tenets of basic Protestantism. I mean, just because not every Protestant agrees with those tenets, well, heck, not every Catholic agrees with the tenets of our faith either. And and the question I would say is that, well, there's no, authority on the Protestant side to enforce that. Well, sure, but like we have the authority and we don't. So how about that? But there are core tenets to Protestantism, right? It's like, it's the idea of faith alone. It's that the Bible is, infallible. I mean, they have central tenets that they hold on to.
The Anglicans.
It is true that they are.
Oh, wait.
It's true that they are
That's not
rooted
Anglican.
in a rebellion from the Catholic Church. So it's not like, but I mean, it's not like they don't have central tenets.
Erica, go.
I mean, I would just say, like, I don't think that holds water, because the problem is that every time an evangelical comes out, like, okay, evangelicals I love, Megan Basham. I love it. Her work on like the stolen shepherds and how evangelical leaders have betrayed these core tenets is phenomenal. And she's documented.
Pray for Megan too. She's going through
she's going through massive
chemotherapy. So pray for her.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
awful. Yeah,
she's a warrior.
Like crazy medical story there that she just put out on Twitter this week. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I love her work, but again, the issue is there's nothing to appeal to other than, well, generally Protestants have always held this. And I would say, like, just anecdotally, talking to converts at Hillsdale, talking to kids who are coming over here at Yale. I mean, we've got 78 people entering the church at Blessed Michael McGivney Parish here this year. Authority is a huge central issue for them. And they see that, not every Catholic adheres to authority, but at least there is solid ground to stand on here when all around is sinking sand.
I guess we have the authority of the church that we say comes from it through Christ, through his apostles, and therefore we have an obvious, like, this is what authority is, and this is what. And I'm just saying.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, of course. And just because evangelical or Protestant Christianity doesn't have that doesn't mean that there aren't like major tenets. And so I guess my whole point.
What major tenets? Like you pointed to sola fide, you sort of did sola scriptura, whereas like every high chair saying, like Tyler O'Neill would object to those, and he's a Protestant. So I don't think that there are. And even evangelical Protestants are splintered into groups that say, well, sola scriptura hasn't worked out for us.
With regards to this discussion about the converts, my point is, like, there is a wide body of inside Protestantism of deeply held beliefs that run through many of them, if not most of them. I'm not saying it's all of them. And so my point is, if they want to solidify what they're doing, whatever. I hope they don't actually, or I hope they're not successful in keeping more people in their flock, because I'd like them to become Catholic. But the bigger thing is, if they want to be more effective against their side leaving for Catholicism, like going to Hillsdale and all of a sudden become Catholic, well, maybe stop it with the comic book description
I
of
agree with you
Catholicism,
on that.
because what you're doing is you're creating this caricature that's not real, and they run into several hundred rock star Catholics who live their faith at Hillsdale, and they go, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it is. And then they start to question everything that they were taught, because they were taught like Catholics have no idea, and they're just led by the Pope, and they worship Mary and blah, blah, blah. And then when they meet somebody who is in contradiction to that, who's actually extremely smart and has well thought out answers, and they're caught flat footed. So go ahead, stop it with this, comic book version of teaching this is what Catholics believe, and understand what Catholics actually believe. And if you still reject it, that's unfortunate, but at least you'll be better informed.
So because what you're talking to is when they meet the first well-informed Catholic, then they look back and say, oh, I was lied to by people that had authority.
Whether they consciously do that or not, I think that ends up happening. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the same happens in politics too, by the way.
Yeah.
If you talk to a really smart, informed. Yeah.
Yeah. When a Democrat actually encounters not a caricature of a conservative who's well thought out, but actually a real, human being in the flesh, and they go, wait a minute.
You're reasonable. You actually
sound reasonable. Yeah. Then they start to question everything they think, because the lies of basically communism rely on shutting out outside information. And I'm not saying communism's like Protestantism, but
yeah, I don't know and look, all this we had a fun discussion here. One thing that I don't know if this is true broadly. I'm just speaking from my own experience. Like, I've recently got to talk to some people that are Protestant. And they ask questions about what Catholics would think of their current situation. And it was kind of eye-opening to me, actually, because sure, I live a very Catholic existence with Catholic people, but like, I really never think about Protestants ever. Never once. Like and I don't know if that's like a broad Catholic thing where it's like, we're not really thinking about them, but then like when they come ask the questions, then it's like, okay, yeah, this is great. We're going to be able to engage you. I got a lot of resources for you. Hopefully you're well catechized, like you have a good baseline so you can speak to it. But then I always have the opportunity to offer like, oh yeah, go read St. Thomas Aquinas. Go read, one of the various doctors of the church. Go read the catechism. Like, I have these resources pretty quickly to be like, even if I'm not able to answer your specific question, I'm very confident that your specific question has actually been addressed with very intense intellectual rigor and tradition behind it. And then also just from an anecdotal experience, like, it might be hard initially to understand the sacraments. I've seen a few people in the chat talk about that, but I feel like once you are exposed to them and then you have a physical encounter with the sacraments, or even being in proximity, going to Eucharistic adoration, it's kind of over at that point. Like, if you have that experience and it's stuck with you, like the sacraments are the reason I'm Catholic today. Yeah. Like, without the sacraments, there's no Tom being Catholic. Like, it's hard to imagine my life without the Eucharist, without confession, without baptism, without all these things. And I know they exist in different forms, but I think when you get to the distilled form, it's kind of hard to go away. So that's kind of an end game situation.
I stick around for the trivia nights, but
for the green carpet, the Jesuit hymns. I know we got our own problems too, and it's
all
not
about
helping,
the Eucharist, y'all. Yep.
But yeah, I think once you get to sacraments, it's kind of hard to go away.
We need to reform the church.
Twilight Zone. Before we get to that, really quickly, do you have any strong thoughts on the JFK dump? I personally do not at all.
Yeah, I saw some people in the chat wanting JFK stuff. I mean, I would think it's a big nothing burger. Like, here's another 80,000 pages for.
Josh has strong thoughts. Come on.
There's a smoking gun in there. You guys can go get into the archives and spend the next 3 years going through the 80 million whatevers. And I
had some fun on the rabbit hole.
I feel like if there was anything, it was destroyed a long time ago. Like, it doesn't exist anymore.
Josh made his characteristic.
Yeah,
leaving me thinking.
Josh and I are a little testy today. What's up?
Yeah, I kind of like it.
Well, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Yes. I made the point that, of course, Nixon was pushed out by the CIA, right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We like that.
The Central Intelligence Agency, they're central. Are they really that intelligent? the fact is, someone asked George Bush back in the day, senior, hey, where were you on, the day JFK got shot? He goes, oh, I don't remember. I don't recall. I thought, this is the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. Any person who was alive in 1963 knows exactly where they were when they're heard.
Yeah.
And so like, I was just going through some of the stuff that they're pushing out on this, because it's like, he was a congressman in the late 60s out of Houston, made his money in oil, and people are like, oh, it's all a front. Oh, maybe, who knows? But the point is,
on the Rangers
well, no, that was the son, the junior. But George Bush Sr., there was, out of the JFK files, that there was a note the day after the assassination out of the Miami field office about George Bush, who worked for the CIA. And it's like, now hold on a second. When he got confirmed to be director of the CIA, he had said he had no, he was a newbie. And that some people are like, well, why should we put someone in charge of the CIA who's never been there before? But it's like, now hold on a second. So was he a part of the CIA in the early 60s? Was he in Dallas?
Oh my gosh. Was he the second gunman? No.
No, I'm not suggesting Bush Sr. killed kids.
That is quite a thing to think about.
I'm glad
George
that we're not
Sr.
going that far.
But I'm like,
there could be something.
Something.
Okay. All right.
It would not surprise me, though. I mean, I tend to think that the mob took out, that
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Jack Ruby is part of the mob, and the mob took out Lee Harvey Oswald. But again, that could have been because the CIA wanted Kennedy gone. That would not shock me in the least. Now, do I have any evidence or proof for that? No. The files are coming out. There's some stuff that raising eyebrows, but
because wasn't his big thing to rein back the intelligence community?
Yeah, and you know who else was big on that? Nixon.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Which we all kind of tongue in cheek. Watergate. Come on now, guys. What are we doing here? What people jumped on was Mossad was mentioned, I think, and then the KGB was mentioned a ton too. But I don't know if based on mentions that was all that revelatory. It doesn't surprise me that these intelligence agencies from all these different countries were involved with the assassination of an American president. It doesn't specify involvement either. I don't know. I feel like I'm out on JFK.
Or just that those were the top two intelligence agencies that we were concerned about at the time. So
yeah. Right.
Of course they're in any investigation. Anyway, I'm still not holding out hope. Could there have been something really juicy? Was there government involvement? Like you said, Josh, I would not be surprised at all. But are there any documents left that point to that? I doubt it.
And what would even be what are people looking for here?
Burn bag.
The CIA to say we did it in all block letters and then highlighted circles? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
what do we expect?
I agree with you. If they did something, why would they ever put it down on paper?
Yeah.
And then it would just be around for 60 years and let anyone just let it out? Hell no.
So
all that evidence that would be incriminating would have been incinerated.
Right. And that's why I'm I actually somewhat maybe appreciate the strategy of the Trump administration to be oh, we're going to be so transparent. We're going to put this out. And even though it'll probably say nothing, right? Because if anything actually was done nefarious, it'd be burned it'd be burned so long ago.
I have a list. Of the DVDs I want to watch when I get to heaven of all the historical events. JFK is definitely up there because I think that we'll just never know on this earth. I also want to see how humans got to South America. I want to see the DVD of us walking over the land bridge or taking the canoes across the Pacific Ocean. So JFK.
What do you mean? Pangea.
And yeah, exactly. Those are my DVDs.
Pangea
I want to see it all.
Great. All right, we got Twilight Zone now. Josh, what do you have other than your JFK take?
Well, actress Cynthia Nixon. She's giving a little speech here.
Who's that?
She's
Sex in the City fame.
Yeah, she was Sex in the City.
No wonder I don't know who it is. All right,
obviously I didn't watch that show.
Most importantly, I am here today as the mother of a proud trans man. I am here today as the aunt of a proud trans man. My best friend's kid is trans.
Whoa.
And my kid's best trans.
We're collecting Infinity Stones.
All the kids are.
My wife and I, our lives are filled with the most amazing, beautiful, brave trans people, young and old, but especially young. My trans kid had his top surgery at NYU a number of years ago. His doctors were fantastic. His surgeon was the best we could have imagined.
Is there more to this? I mean,
You can stop at any point, but
my
just think of
gosh.
it. She says, my kids are trans, my sister kids are trans, every kid I know is trans. Okay. So instead of it being like a 1 in 1,000 chance, that you'd have a kid with trans, and therefore all your kids are trans, all your sister kids are trans, all your neighbors and best friends kids are trans. What are the odds? I mean, you'd have a better chance of winning the Powerball 2 days in a row than that. What it tells me is that, in fact, this is a social contagion, and you're experimenting on kids through pure pressure. You want to be seen as cool. I don't think it's in her heart like super malicious. Like she's like, I'm just going to trans my kids because I'm going to be popular. But I don't know if that she ever gets to that point. But that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
It's pretty insidious.
The doctor that I had chop off my daughter's breasts was phenomenal. It's so crazy. I was actually watching this video in the kitchen while I was making dinner last night, and I didn't make it as far as we just made it, so I didn't get to see the end there. But she comes up with the line, and my wife and I, my 15-year-old walks through and just looks at it and is like, "That's bizarre," and keeps walking. That's a healthy reaction to this whole thing. Ugh.
All right, Erica.
That poor woman. All right. So we have torching.
That was sufficiently Twilight enough for you.
That was very Twilight. Yes. Oh my gosh. And no, that video is not old. There is another video several months ago of Cynthia Nixon saying the same thing. I saw someone in the chat.
She's been on the beat.
She's just on the beat. This is her shtick that she does, and it's really sad. All right. So we had torching the Teslas, and in England we have bashing the Bard. That's right. We are going to decolonize Stratford-on-Avon, Shakespeare's birthplace, because Shakespeare has become a symbol of, you got it, white supremacy. He was just too good, and you cannot have white men who were good at anything. So Shakespeare's birthplace is being decolonized following concerns about the playwright being used to promote white supremacy. His birthplace trust owns buildings linked to the Bard, including his birthplace and the home that he shared with his wife, Anne Hathaway. Not that Anne Hathaway, the original Anne Hathaway. Yeah. The trust also owns archival material, including parish records of his birth and baptism. So here are the recommendations. We have to shift the narrative of Shakespeare's greatness to acknowledge to people coming through Stratford that he has caused harm through epistemic violence. And for those of you who aren't sure, yes, that's epistemic as in knowledge violence. Knowledge is violence. The project also recommended that the trust now present Shakespeare not as the greatest, but as, quote, part of a community of equal and different writers and artists from around the world. That's right. Shakespeare's just one among many. We're going to tear down all the statues. We're going to tear down Shakespeare. We're going to tear down George Washington. We'll tear down the Confederate. We'll just have no statues of anybody. Everyone will be equal. Everyone's the same. We have no geniuses. We have no elites. We have no men. We have no women. And we will all finally find peace and happiness when there is no more greatness anywhere to be seen. I'm like, come on, guys. Really, let's just acknowledge that the real issue here is you don't understand iambic pentameter. They just don't know what iambic pentameter is. They don't. These are the people who think that Polonius in Hamlet is actually giving life advice when he says, "Know thyself, for thine own self be true." Yeah,
Erica, who's behind this?
They don't understand iambic pentameter. That's the problem.
That's the problem. They're just bitter.
To me, who's behind this? Because I see, quote, it could be seen as a symbol of, quote, British cultural superiority.
Right.
These are British people.
These are British people who have been taught to hate themselves. And so now they are saying, we are going to tear down the greatest symbol, the apex of British cultural achievement, because we hate ourselves this much. Shakespeare is just one of many, pretty good writers out there. And they're just bitter because they don't understand him. That's the message.
You'll never catch me apologizing for American writers ever. Doesn't even matter if they're bad. I'm just not going to do it.
Mark Twain just wasn't that great.
No,
I mean,
I'll
he's
never
about as
apologize
good
for
as
Mark
me.
Twain. Never. Name one. I won't apologize.
That same kind of thing that's affecting England like this is affecting large pockets of our own country.
Certainly.
And it's why the Democrats do this kind of stuff in this country, and then they wonder, gosh, why are white men not voting for us?
Right.
We call them evil, and we tear down every statue because it's a white dude, even if they own slaves.
This is like a very British way, British version of the statue debate that we had in this country not too long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, this is the most British way to possibly have this over Shakespeare, but yeah, it's like, oh no, they're not. We're just going to tear down General Lee. We're not going to get to the founding fathers. Sure enough, Thomas Jefferson.
There they go. Yep.
Gone.
Martin Luther
George
King.
Washington.
We don't like him anymore.
Gone.
Yep. Didn't go far enough.
I'm just never going to apologize for American stuff ever.
I'm never going to apologize
ride
for
or die.
Shakespeare.
Someone said, actually, ironically, that was one of the things they admired about Biden was that he was so loyal to his crackhead son, Hunter, that he just never, he never disowned him. He never cut him off politically because it would have been better for him. It's like, I actually appreciate that he had some loyalty to his own son.
Wait, are you comparing Hunter to William Shakespeare? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, potentially.
No.
I don't know. He's kind of wild. He wrote some strange plays.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, too. Wasn't he considered kind of progressive?
Yes, that's the other part. His plays were bawdy. I mean, at the time, everything was. This is Elizabethan England, of course. But he wasn't exactly like, puritanically towing the line for the sexual mores of the time. So
no,
yeah.
I know our producer Rosie's just punching air right now, too.
I know that the Chesterton Academy my kids go to school with are unafraid of Shakespeare, and they just did a play this week, so I had the chance to enjoy it.
Wow, bunch of little British supremacists.
You really enjoyed it, Josh? Rosie in the chat. Rosie just goes, Othello, anyone?
Yeah. Producer Rosie punching air right now.
That's right, Rosie.
Okay, I got two will be quick hitters. One, we have an announcement that DoorDash has reached an agreement with Klarna. They have signed a deal where customers can choose to pay for food deliveries in interest-free installments or deferred options aligned with payday schedules. So if I need to break
food that you eat, that sounds great.
Oh, if I need to break that down for anyone,
what could go wrong?
Yeah, pay for someone to deliver McDonald's to your door in 4 easy payments of $3.
That reminds me of the joke that Jeff Foxworthy said, I'm going to finance this tattoo. 3 more payments in it, and this son of a gun's mine.
I'm almost concerned about what's going to come up here, but, you get Dave Ramsey coming in here with, what are we doing here? I mean, the memes are just unreal on this. Born too late to ever own a home, born too soon to live for free in the metaverse, born just in time to finance a pizza from Domino's. People were making like what is this called? The Big Short. They were making Big Short jokes about it of like financing pizza. It's crazy. That's truly Twilight Zone. I saw that. I'm like, we're not in good shape as a country if that's the direction.
Maybe learn to cook at home and save some money.
All right. And so for this one, I can't take any original credit for. Shout out. We got an Irish guy working here at Catholic Vote. He's one of my favorites.
Hey,
Shout out
Joe.
But a new Lenten opportunity has dropped. A priest told Catholics to watch Meghan Markle documentary as penance for Lent. Shout out to Father Brendan Kilcoyne. He described the hit show as bloody awful. And I just have to read verbatim because he's so funny. He has a podcast. And yeah, quote, the great line that has given us so many English kings and queens from an Irish Catholic point of view, perhaps of varying attractiveness, it does not deserve this. It had a narrow escape. There must be some sort of instinctive, almost muscular spasm by which monarchy still has a survival instinct that manages to expel a member who is a direct threat. Meghan Markle is nemesis. She is the anti-monarchy. Thank God they're out there in Montecito. Herself and her poor deluded noggins of a husband.
I wish you had an Irish accent because I think that would have come. Man. Can you get Joe in?
We might need to get Joe in for a dramatic reading.
Oh, man,
I mean, so funny. Great. Said it's cat in the Irish sense, meaning it's bloody awful, but it's so cat it's actually quite good. It's enjoyable. He suggested people should drink in the mediocrity and savor the narrow escape that one of the most distinguished royal lines in the world has just had. And then said, yeah, maybe you can offer it up for Lent or do it as a as a penance. So
That might be harder than giving up meat on Fridays.
Yeah.
I tried to watch a little bit to see if I could get some good clips for Twilight Zone, and I made it 3 minutes.
She is so toxic, so bad.
I don't think. Yeah.
There are only a few times where I think, like I truly have pity for someone, and I do have pity for that ginger husband of hers.
You pity Harry?
I do. No, I don't know what any man could have done that would have been that unforgivable that would be left with her. That's like the video clip of Alec and Hilaria Baldwin this week. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
Oh, that was bad.
And this is another case where men do stupid things because their wives are beautiful. I mean, Meghan Markle drives me crazy. I think she's a very attractive woman.
Suits?
And Hilaria Baldwin is gorgeous. And Alec Baldwin was and her were doing this press. She was talking to a entertainment reporter or whatever. And Alec was trying to help, but was interrupting her. He probably shouldn't have done it. And she just turned around and is like basically scolded him like he was a little kid, told him to shut up. I'm talking. You're not talking now.
So like me on this podcast?
I'm speaking. It was a Harris moment. It was like, I'm speaking. It was
bad.
It was just bad.
It was really bad. So it's like, oh my gosh, I don't cheer for divorce, but I'm like, dude, both those guys, I'm like, man, I'm sorry, man.
People want a live stream of you watching this documentary, Josh. Do you think we punish you with that?
That's a great idea. It is Lent. It's
and also,
Friday.
isn't this a tremendous win for the arranged marriage crowd that your family probably knows best for you in the case of Prince Harry?
Yeah. I mean,
and another notch in the belt of South Park with probably the best analysis of this of their "We Just Want Privacy" world tour.
Yeah, I love South Park for that. That was
perfect.
A good line.
We just want privacy world tour.
World tour. Don't get better than that. Don't get better than that. All right, guys. Good Friday show. If you want to help out the show, go check out Title Lock. Thank you for helping sponsor this episode. If you want to help us out, join the Champions Club. It's the best way to support us. Shout out to all our champions out there today. Reviews, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe here on YouTube. Just hit 25,000 subscribers. Thank you to all of you who subscribe. If you want to email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. And as always, pray for us. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. See you guys in the next one. Catch you on Monday. Have a great weekend.